Alright guys, so our writing this time isn't going to be like that shellfish writing that I know honestly was the most enjoyable. We're going to be working on fairy tales for our next writing project. So this is our objective for today. We're going to read and analyze a fairy tale. We're going to write about features of a fairy tale. And we're going to share our ideas. So since we're doing it digitally, the sharing is really going to be me sharing with you guys. But today we're going to focus on what is the genre of fairy tale? What makes a fairy tale a fairy tale? So, we've read those two, what's called fables by Aesop. So I want you guys to think of fairy tales that you think you know. And we're going to look at their structure and see how they're familiar. So maybe Little Red Riding Hood, maybe Jack and the Beanstalk. What do all those have in common? Now, while you're thinking about that, I'm going to share this mentor text with you. So what that means is, it just means someone wrote it in 4th grade and we thought it was pretty good and we just want to share it with you guys. So, Ella visits the village. Once upon a time, I'm going to make that note really fast. I hear that a lot in fairy tales. A young girl named Ella lived with her grandparents in a cottage in a sunny field. While Ella's grandfather worked in the garden, Ella's grandmother spent her days selling wooden dolls in the village. It was a solitary life for Ella because she didn't have her friends of her own age. One morning she asked Gramps, "Why can't I go with Gramps to the village?" "You must stay here with me, Ella," said Gramps. "Why don't you go collect some wood for Gramps?" Feeling very lonely, Ella headed off into the forest. Suddenly she heard a voice. "Are you lost, little girl?" Ella turned and saw a small red fox. "You can talk," she said. "I am not an ordinary," the creature laughed. "What are you doing here?" "I am collecting wood for my grandmother," Ella said. "Why aren't you with her?" "I'm not supposed to go to the village." The fox said, "If you want to go to the village, follow me." He trotted away, and Ella followed. Soon they came upon the village. Ella turned to the fox, but he was gone. She walked into a crowded marketplace and heard a gasp. "Hair as red as fire!" exclaimed a man looking at her. Then Ella heard a familiar voice. "Ella, what are you doing here?" Grams ran and hugged her. "I wanted to see the village," Ella explained. "Why are people staring at me?" "We should have told you, Ella. The king once had a beautiful wife with bright red hair. She died giving birth to a child who looked just like her. The king was heartbroken. He couldn't bear to look upon his daughter because she reminded him of his beloved wife. He insisted that his daughter be sent far away. You are the king's daughter. Your mother was our daughter. We promised that we would keep you hidden." Then they both heard a powerful voice behind them. I was so wrong. They turned. A handsome king looked at them sadly. "Can you ever forgive me, daughter? I was miserable after your mother died. I was not thinking clearly. I have missed knowing you." "I forgive you," Ella said tearfully. "Now you'll live here with me and have a life full of friends and family," proclaimed the king. And they lived happily ever after. It ended with a part I also hear in lots of fairy tales. Now, maybe not the best story in the world, but it had a lot of features that we see in fairy tales. So like other types of narrative writing, a fairy tale tells a story and includes characters. So we have Ella, the king, the Gram and Gramps, we have the fox. And it also has dialogues. Remember, dialogue is when people are speaking. So I look at here and I see lots of dialogue. Look at all this dialogue that I can just pull out. Remember, I can see it easily because it has those quotation marks. So a narrative has lots of dialogue as well. Now, a fairy tale also includes features that may be different from other types of stories. So some fairy tales are about royalty, about kings and queens, like this one was. Some take place a long time ago, like we saw at the very beginning, once upon a time, hurrying a long time ago. Fairy tales have animals that talk. Fairy tales include a character that is helped by other characters. So the fox helped her because the fox got her to the village. Now, we also have a helper, a bad guy with special powers. It could be like the fox, or it could be a villain like we said, special powers. And fairy tales, at least for our purposes, they always have a happy ending. Now, with your fairy tales that you write, I want you to include many of these features. So let's sum them up really fast together. What are features we have in a fairy tale? So, in a fairy tale, writer includes, being you guys, a story that happened a long time ago. We're going to use a story about royalty. So it's going to be about a king, queen, princess, prince, something along those lines for ours. Again, not all fairy tales have them, but for ours, just for consistency there. We're going to have a talking animal or a character with special powers, and we're going to include a helping character. Now, you don't have to include all of these, but I do want you to put most of them in as we do our story. There's not going to be any writing today, so just be thinking about what fairy tale you can write. Now, notice, if you go back and listen to our story, it had all these features as well. It started with once upon a time, or takes place a long time ago. About royalty, it turned out that Ella was the king's daughter. The talking animals or character with special powers, well, that was the fox. Remember, the fox used to surprise the fox. And our helping character was also the fox in the story. The fox helps Ella get to the village. So we're going to be reviewing these and this story and this text later. So I just want you guys to get those thinking brains on and think, what about a fairy tale can I include? So start thinking about your characters, how royalty might play into it. If you're stuck, think of your favorite fairy tale movies or cartoons that you've even seen. Alright guys, good job, and I'll see you when we do our writing tomorrow.